Le Mazurier in the newsroom. Welcome to the France 24 debate. Tunisia, it's been billed as the birthplace and even poster child of the Arab Spring. Now, after last Friday's ransacking of the U.S. Embassy in Tunis, the burning and looting of an American school there, Washington has pulled non-essential staff. That puts Tunisia in the same bag as Sudan. Authorities argue it's not fair. After all, there have been worldwide protests against that anti-Islam film out of California. But the Obama administration feels Tunisians did not do nearly enough to prevent the violence that resulted in 4 deaths last Friday. Tunisia, where tourism was on the rebound. Tunisia, where after decades of dictatorship, hardline Islamists now too have the right to speak out. But speaking out is one thing. Attacks on bars, art galleries, and university campuses another. Today in the France 24 debate, Tunisia in turmoil. And with us to talk about it is Adnan Ben Youssef of the Al-Jumhouri Party. Thank you for being with us, an opposition party in Tunisia. Also joining us from Washington, Steve McInerney of the Project on Middle East Democracy. I hope to go to Tunis in a moment as well. And join soon a member of the Constituent Assembly, Monsef Sheikh Rou, who, by the way, the Ennahda Party, the Islamist party which leads Tunisia's ruling coalition, was invited, did not respond to our invitation to join us in this discussion. And the France 24 debate, where you can always join the conversation, you're welcome to join us on Facebook and on Twitter. You can find us at François F24. Let's start with the very latest on this story. No significant arrests yet after last Friday's violence, but earlier this Monday, police surrounded the mosque of Salafist preacher Abu Iyad after lunchtime prayer, which included his call for the interior minister to step down. The preacher successfully exfiltrated by a thick cordon of supporters. Police then backed off and left without any incidences. Adnan Ben Youssef, kind of strange. What's your comment on what transpired this Monday? We had our correspondent on the scene, David Thompson. He sees the police arrive in force, and then they left. What happened?
I think that the police was a little bit weak because the lack of clear political decision to stop what was happening. What was happening was very clear. The date was very clear. The call of the Salafis to go to the U.S. Embassy after the prayer was
there was fair warning.
Yes, they were very warned, and they did not even work as professional police people to prevent people even to go there. So there are some...
So this is further evidence of it, what happened this Monday. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. Steve McInerney, do you agree?
Yes, in general I do. I think that the Tunisian government and the ruling coalition, the Troika, including Ennahda Party that you mentioned, I think they've appeared very weak in the past several days. I think the police's inability to move forward in the case that you mentioned, makes the police and security forces appear weak. In addition to that, the inability of the Tunisian government to protect the U.S. Embassy on Friday, I think also reflects very poorly on the ability of this government to provide basic security for Tunisia.
And who is this Abu Iyad, and how significant is he?
I think he's one of several. I mean, I don't think he's the only person that was behind these protests by any means. I think he's one of several leaders, but among the most influential, who helped bring people out to the U.S. Embassy on Friday. He has obviously a pretty strong following, but among certainly a minority of Tunisians who are sympathetic to these sort of what we would perceive to be more extremist Salafi views.
All right, Steve McInerney in Washington agreeing with you, and your analysis is, well, the country's interim president. He sided unequivocally with Washington in statements he made Friday evening. 2 phone calls there were between Monsef Marzouki and the U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Here's what he had to say on national television.
The violent scenes which Tunis has seen today are completely unacceptable. We would have understood the protesters' anger and shared it had they protested peacefully within the rule of law, as is the right of Tunisians in their new democratic country.
and the U.S. ambassador to Tunisia has reportedly asked for reparations. Americans in Tunis feel authorities did not adequately prepare for Friday's protests.
Things you have in place is assuming that the Tunisian government is going to be there as well. The authorities are going to back you up. So when those things are not there at all, then you're just, you're just out in the open. And that's what's so terrifying about that.
President Marzouki's entourage fully agreeing with that assessment. Here's what his spokesperson told Time magazine over the weekend. Half the arrests were made by our guards, whose job is only to protect the president and his staff. Well, joining us now from Tunis, as promised, Monsef Sheikh Rouhou, member of the Constituent Assembly. Thank you for joining us in the France 24 debate. Your reaction to what happened on Friday and what transpired today with police showing up and then not arresting this Salafist leader?
Well, thank you. The first reaction is that the democratic process in this country, where the Arab Spring has started, as you remember, will not stop. The democratic transition will keep on going, but of course there are some torrents facing the boat of democracy, and we are decided here to face off all the difficulties. As you know, I'm a member of parliament here in Tunis, the National Assembly, and we are telling the government, since we are not part of the majority, we're telling the government that there is a responsibility the government has to take in securing the peace and the security of all persons on Tunisian soil, Tunisians of course, but diplomats and visitors and foreigners and tourists. So this job ought to be done correctly, and on Wednesday we are inviting the Minister of Interior to come and give us the detail that prove that he and his services are competent enough to do this job. The second element is that we do not want our people to fall in a trap, because this movie set by this person, Basile, in Los Angeles, he has been working on it for 1 year, is a trap. It's a trap that led to crimes, killing persons, killing demonstrators, killing an ambassador, killing other persons with him are crimes. And the question we're asking here is, to whom do these crimes benefit? Certainly not to the Tunisian people, certainly not to the American people, certainly not to America, nor to Tunisia. So there are elements that are outside our best interests that are playing around with our interests. Here we think that the representatives of the people in Tunisia and the representatives of the people in the United States ought to sit down and figure out ways and means to avoid that hatred which is combated by the law in the United States. Hatred is not used in order to put the executive branch in the United States and the executive branch in Tunisia in this shock direction that's not good.
All right, let me go back to your first point, Monsef Sheikh Rouhou. You say you've got the Interior Minister who's going to speak before the Constituent Assembly on Wednesday. In view of what you've seen so far, should he resign?
The Interior Minister is summoned regularly by the Parliament here, by the Assembly, in order to explain. He's a member of the executive branch, and we are the legislative branch here. He is supposed to explain why there has been inefficiencies in securing peace and protection to all the people that Friday when the demonstration took place.
What's your idea on that?
Could you repeat your question?
Why do you think that security was lax on Friday?
Well, if there is one person hurt or dead, there are security lapses. We should be a society and a democracy where security is guaranteed to everybody. not only to Tunisian residents, to Tunisian, now I hope, people who are responsible in democracy. That means citizen.
But Monsef, excuse me, how do you explain the fact that the road to the embassy was wide open, whereas it's closed this Monday?
Well, I think that, and I'm a member of the opposition, the democratic opposition in the parliament. I remind you, we are the largest group in parliament following Ennahda, and before even the partners of Ennahda. And we all think that there were lapses in the way the government has conducted the security for everybody.
All right, Steve McInerney in Washington. What's your explanation as to what happened on Friday?
No, I think it's difficult to know exactly. I mean, I think it's some combination. I think a lot of this is just simply the unpreparedness of the security forces and the government for this kind of incident, and not enough foresight and preparation. I think many of the people in the government now are new to government, and I think this sort of incident, not only in Tunisia and similarly like we saw in Egypt and like we've seen elsewhere, I think for the most part it's not a desire by the government or the security forces to see this kind of escalation, but it's simply unpreparedness by many people in the government who are new to government and had not really faced this kind of incident since they, took power in the elections last October. So I think that's the primary cause. I think, many Tunisians are reacting differently to this. Of course, Tunisia is sort of a polarized society. A lot of the Tunisian liberals are sort of very upset and sort of blame Nahda and some of the Islamist, actors that have a role in the government now for what they see as sort of having been too soft and encouraging some of the sort of more radical Islamists, including some of the Salafi movements, in a way that sort of emboldened them. And so I think among many of Nahda's political opponents, they lay a lot of the blame for this. That's what they see as sort of political posturing by Nahda in trying to sort of gain support from some of the more Salafi sympathetic Tunisian citizens.
Adnan Ben Youssef?
Yes, I think that unpreparedness and the weakness of the police, it's not the whole clue. I think also that Nahda was not able to say to people, we are going to protect the US embassy.
There should have been a forceful statement.
Exactly. I think that Nahda was quite embarrassed with being the protector of US embassy, and they clearly did not be able to have a political position.
And at this time, we're pleased to welcome Jalila Hegli-Punier of the Think Ahead for the Med think tank group. Thank you for being with us. Your analysis on what happened Friday.
Yeah, actually there are three theses on what happened on Friday for the escalation of what happened. Actually, the first is either there's a tacit agreement between the government officials and their bases of Salafist extremists, or the total inefficiency of the government to ensure security. And the third, maybe it's both. So actually we need to have time to analyze what happened and why the government was not able to protect an embassy which is in its homeland, so we need to have the time to analyze that.
To think it out.
Yeah.
Now, on sister station Radio France International this morning, the visiting tourism minister objected to the fact that with the US pulling out non-essential personnel, that effectively puts Tunisia on par with Sudan at this point in time.
There are every now and then things that spin out of control that we condemn. We do everything to keep them under control, but to extrapolate and make quick comparisons like that, I think that's going too far.
He talks about isolated acts in this case. Do you agree?
I don't think that he lives in the same country than me. I mean, he's saying that it is isolated, but it's a new episode from a long series. He seems to not try to see even that. I think he's doing good his business, his work, just to say everything is going well. And I think this is a matter of the former regime to say everything is okay. It's not okay at all. I think this minister should be more close to the truth.
Steve McInerney, the past months, we've seen attacks on university campuses, we've seen attacks on art galleries, attacks in the only bar in the town where the Arab Spring began. Did authorities fail to heed the calls?
Yes, I think that's accurate. I think certainly in hindsight now, you know, the latest attacks that have really escalated against the U.S. Embassy can be seen as sort of really only the latest in a kind of series of gradually intensifying violence and attacks. And I think it's fair to say that what's sort of now seen as clear warning signs were not taken seriously enough by the Tunisian government. We hope there'll be sort of a dramatic reversal, and we hope we'll see sort of a serious commitment to kind of intensifying efforts to secure secure stability in Tunisia and prevent further attacks of this nature. And
Steve, when you hear Jalila here say that there are some who believe that perhaps there's a bit of pandering going on the part of the moderate Islamist Ennahda party to more radical elements, your thoughts?
I think that's a very widespread view. I think there's some evidence of that. I think Ennahda party also is a large party that's not entirely monolithic, and I think you have different leaders of Ennahda who might be trying to sort of gain from these kind of events in different ways. So I do think that's there's some truth to that, and I think that's a major cause for concern. I think here in Washington there's a lot of serious concern about the government response over the past week in Tunisia, and particularly this is a government that the Obama administration here in Washington has taken great pains to try to support, and they've are perceived as having been very supportive of the Tunisian government led by Ennahda. They've come up with more than $400 million in assistance to Tunisia at a time that's a very difficult budget environment here in Washington. So I think the administration is very disappointed that a government that they've tried to be supportive of and a political transition that they've tried to be supportive of has not responded more effectively over the past week.
And we're going to be looking a little bit more closely at the reactions out of Washington, not just to what's gone on in Tunisia, but in the wider Muslim world since last week, and that hate video came out of California, or was prompted back on September 11th, when we come back for part 2 of the France 24 debate.